Hello, I am Mischievous Mark Ginocchio, and I own every issue of Amazing Spider-Man, Amazing Fantasy 15, and all of the Amazing Spider-Man annuals, which I say do not count.
And I'm Dapper Dan Gavazden, and I too own every issue of Amazing Spider-Man, but I also own every issue of every volume of Ultimate Spider-Man, including the annuals, which I say definitely count. Especially that really awesome one where Spider-Man stops a bank robbery that's drawn by David LaFuente, and he uses his webs to catch a cop car midair. It's a really excellent annual. So go check that one out.
Excellent, Dan. I mean, I don't have a snappy comeback. I mean, I know you have Ultimate Fallout number 4, which I guess is like the Miles version of Amazing Fantasy 15, and yet it's no Amazing Fantasy 15. But that's okay, Dan. I'm sure you have like
Wait, are you implying that you don't have Ultimate Fallout number
Oh
4?
no, I do, but I'm just saying, like,
Oh, okay. All right. I was like, whoa, wait
no,
a
no, no,
minute.
no, no, no,
Wait a
no,
minute.
no, 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 no. Quiet, you. Anyway, welcome to the Amazing Spider Talk, the show where two fans and collectors uncover the strange, fun, and fascinating history of the Spider-Man comic universe. Thanks for joining us for this review episode of the Amazing Spider Talk.
Yeah, if you want to swing along with us through our journey of Spidey's past, present, and future, subscribe to Amazing Spider Talk on your favorite podcast app and be sure to leave us a review to help spread the word about our show.
This podcast exists because of the support of our Patreon members. If you want to receive early episodes, exclusive artwork, and keep this podcast going, go to amazingspidertalk.com and consider joining our Patreon.
Today on the show, Mark and I are going to be continuing our coverage of Ultimate Spider-Man Volume 3. Today we're going to be discussing Ultimate Spider-Man Volume 3, numbers 13 to 18. It's like the third arc, or I don't even know if you would call
Compendium.
it an arc. It's the third volume of this series. These issues were written by Jonathan Hickman. The covers feature artwork by Marco Checchetto and Matthew Wilson. The interior pages feature pencils and inks by Marco Checchetto and David Messina, colors by Matthew Wilson, and letters by VC's Cory Petit. They were also nominated for an Eisner Award, so, take it or leave it in regards to our opinion on the book. These issues were first released starting January 22nd, 2024 through June 25th, 2025, and I'll admit, at the time of this recording, issue 19 is out, but I have not read it.
So don't ask us about it.
Yeah, right now we are going to talk as though we have not read issue 19, which I've deliberately held off on because I didn't want it to influence my thoughts on these issues.
All right.
So, Mark.
Yes.
I think, both started somewhat positive on this title, and in the second volume, we're kind of starting to feel a little more lukewarm, tepid, middling on this one. What do you, if that's a fair characterization, let me know, and then tell me, what do you think about these 6 issues?
No, I think that's very fair. And, you kind of set it up in your intro when you were like, it got an Eisner, so, our mileage may vary. I mean, look, I think talking about this book is very challenging because, for me personally, because yes, the book started off with such promise, and it kind of just settled into my whole thing is I don't find anything particularly special about this comic. And that doesn't mean it's a bad comic. That doesn't even mean it's an unenjoyable comic. But when things were initially being set up, those first couple of issues, I was like, oh, I think we're going to get something really special and unique that we're going to look back on years from now and be like, oh man, remember when we rebooted Ultimate and just like how amazing that whole experience was. And, every issue was destination comic book reading, and it just wasn't that. So there is that element of the expectations just not being met and kind of being disappointed, but still reading it, being like, okay, there's some good stuff here. There's some other stuff I can take or leave. And there's some stuff that I'm just, it's Hickman being Hickman, which is definitely a personal flavor. That's never really been my thing. But then the other thing to talk about, Dan, and, I don't want to gauge too much of our review around this, but certainly in an opening commentary. It's kind of the 800-pound gorilla in the room, but like this book is so beloved right now by so many people. Obviously the Eisner nomination, and like there's just an element of like, what am I missing here? That like I want to be dismissive and be like, oh, these are just people that are pining for the marriage and they're gonna like it no matter what. But I don't think it's that. I think it's greater than that, and it's not clicking for me. Maybe I'm looking for something that it's not, and we can talk about that in the context of the comic and not versus everybody else. But that's where it's at. I mean, like, this comic is fine, and a lot of my commentary is going to reflect that. But like, I think the counterbalance of just so much love and adulation and praise for this book has really thrown me for a loop, because I look at this and I'm like, how is this any different than Miles's book right now, or even ASM right now with Joe Kelly, which has been mostly solid? Like, I don't see what makes this so elevated and high art right now.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with anything that you've said. I think that like there are some elements that set it apart from the Joe Kelly run, even. And I don't mean that as like necessarily a positive or a
Well, it's
negative. I just think
clearly
it's offering something
it is
different.
a different
Yeah,
flavor for sure. But I just mean
yeah,
like I shouldn't mean like, what makes it better. I mean, better is so subjective,
sure.
but like all the same, I'm just like th- this the praise that I'm seeing for this book is like, like I, it's on par of like what we got in the beginning of like the JMS JRJR run, like some of the all-time great runs of Spider-Man and some of the all-time great comic book runs. Like that's kind of like where this book is being
Yeah,
leveled to right now, and I'm just like, huh? I don't see it. I see this as a fine Spider-Man story that's taking a different twist on it, in the way that it is an alt universe story. Um, but like, is it even a Spider-Man story? Like that's the other thing, like.
sure. Yeah, yeah. I mean, look, the things that distinguish it for me are I think it has a different pacing style than most Spider-Man books on the market, and even most Marvel books. It feels like adult in it, both its like artistic trappings and the way the characters are written. For the most part, whether I think that mean like adult is inherently a good thing
Right.
is something entirely different. But I think it has that sort of like veneer of like mature heroes comics
Mhm.
that I think makes it somewhat more accessible to the like the non-comic reader or the casual comic reader versus like picking up an issue of Amazing Spider-Man and seeing him fighting, demons with magical powers,
Right.
or and like any of the kind of silly stuff that like deeply embedded ASM readers, have become accustomed to,
Right.
right? This is definitely a grounded. It's a sort of like Marvel Cinematic Universe take. Like the Green Goblin is an Iron Man suit, like literally,
Yeah.
like it has that veneer of these are real people doing that, and I think that has a sort of like a all audiences appeal, and I think I don't find the characters recognizable, but I think some people might in the sort of like very baseline reading of them. And I think the pacing and writing style is akin to like a Brian Michael Bendis in terms of like how he writes people, which is to say, not very comic booky, more like casual.
Right.
And I think that's also welcoming. So I think those are some of the elements that are maybe still bringing people in. And look, I'm going to get some praise out of the way because I think we're going to heap probably not so much of it on this title.
Right.
Like, I still think there's a lot to like here as an ultimate title, right? Meaning, like, the ultimate line as we're sort of experiencing it now is this sort of Antifa, energy
Mm.
throughout it. The sort of, there are these powerful elites that are controlling the world, and these heroes who have been ignored by, society or their powers buried are going to rise up and take back what's theirs, right? And whether you want to call that Antifa or MAGA or whatever,
Sure.
like it's a sort of like outsider energy against the elites. And I think Ultimates does it really well with a very progressive energy and a like screw fascists
Yeah.
kind of bent.
Yeah.
And I think some of that energy is in this book. But I think it is more interested in that sort of stuff than it is in being a Spider-Man story. Like at its core, there's something interesting about like a group of family and friends who see something wrong with their world and don't question their role in fixing it, right? Like that's what the Ultimate's about. And I kind of think that that's what this book is about.
Right.
But I think in focusing on that, it's forgotten the Spider-Man element of this, which is like about how you balance power and responsibility, right?
Right.
And what I was hoping for from this book, and I think it probably is related to what you were saying, is, I critiqued the first issue, I thought, for being hollow and not really telling us why Peter's feeling the way that he is, which I think is a critique that still remains 18 issues into this. But like, I feel strongly myself in the real world that like I can play a strong role in reshaping our government and fighting for my beliefs. But as that becomes increasingly more fraught, even physically so, right? We've seen people, potentially, kicked out of the country or denaturalized for expressing their political beliefs, right? I have to ask myself, how much am I willing to risk my immediate family safety for a potential long-term cause, right?
Right.
Even media like Andor wrestled with this,
Right.
right? Like Andor was like, I want to go away with, the love of my life. We can survive long term, like is it worth me dying for a freedom I'll never see?
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Those are themes that I could really get into, the sort of weighing it and making Spider-Man the complicated figure that is wrestling with his role in all of this. But I don't think the book is interested in that at all.
Right.
Like it just rolls out the red carpet for Peter on nearly every issue.
Right. Well, like, I think the Andor analogy is a good one in that, like, Andor is using obviously an established IP and universe, but the story, we're not like, this is not like alt universe Luke and Han, you know what I mean? Like these are wholly original characters with their own stories and I think that's the ultimate problem I have with this comic vis-a-vis maybe even like the Ultimates, where I feel like the Ultimates has the parallels to the 616, but it feels distinct enough in how it crafts its characters and who they are in this universe that I'm not spending as much time. And again, like maybe it's also I'm not as intimately close with those characters from the 616 as I am Spider-Man, so I'm not like looking to like, so wait, where's the Spider-Man? Where's the like why are we, because I think that's where, and I've talked about this in other contexts when, not just in comic books, where it's like I continue to have a struggle. I continue to struggle with the idea of like, we have this great idea, this great premise, but let's make it let's use Spider-Man IP to tell it, when it's like, okay, well then bring Spider-Man into this in a real tangible way where Spider-Man is recognizable, because he's not here. I mean, like the only thing that's recognizable is the physical presence of the suit. But like this Peter, this MJ, the I mean, like nothing feels tethered to anything, and it's just like we're just telling a story with people with the same names, but like and some physical attributes that seem the same, but like I don't know, like that's
and a no kill code that is not explained.
Right, exactly. Because we really have not done any kind of character work with this Peter, and to especially when you get it on other characters, which we'll talk to later into this. So like, I don't know, like, but you know what I'm trying to say? Like Andor works because it's like, we're going to tell this story in the Star Wars universe using events around A New Hope and that, and Rogue One and everything that about, but like, we can just tell this wholly original story with this really kind of progressive interesting energy because we're not necessarily tethered to the the bounds of like what comes with using established characters that you already know from other universes and like, you know, again, that's all of my struggles with this book come from the fact that I'm just like, at the end of every issue, I'm like, well, that was fun, but it's not Spider-Man. It's just not. I don't see, like, there's Spider-Man characters in it. It's Kingpin, it's Jonah, it's Uncle Ben, but is this a Spider-Man comic? I don't think it is.
I think it's like trying, like to your point, I think it's trying to have its cake and eat it too, because it introduces these characters and then kind of refuses to do any character work with them, so that you are meant to, and my read on is you're meant to basically copy what you know from the 616 onto these characters. And yet, unlike the Ultimates, which I think is the far superior book, where in that book, literally, you meet, like, in an early issue, or maybe even the first issue, an Ant-Man and the Wasp, who, because the maker did what he did to undo the hero stories for so many heroes, they have to be restored and, to their prior place. And the way that they do it, the Ultimates have access to the 616 databanks of memories.
Yeah.
And they basically play their story out before their eyes. And then they get these new characters to react to it. Like Hank Pym gets upset that like the other version of himself beat his wife.
Right.
And like, well, that's really interesting. Who is this new character that like, there's a very clear divergent point in the timeline. And this one both wants us to copy all of those attributes that we know about those characters over, but then it has no allegiance to the reality of like, okay, this is the sort of what if breaking point where everything diverged from it, which is, I think, why in the first episode of our coverage of this, I really wanted to drill down on, is this a what if comic or not?
Yeah.
Right? Because the Ultimates is treating it kind of like it is.
Yeah.
And this book, it's like, I mean, we'll get to the Mysterios, but there is no way that I can rationalize the events of this book happening because of what the maker did. It's just kind of moving the chess pieces around and scrambling them into the mythology. And so I don't feel like it's acceptable to ask the reader to copy what they know about those characters over, because everything else hasn't been copied over.
Yeah. No, I think that's a fair thing. All right.
What do we think about the art? Because like that remains a high point for me still. And I think even Messina has stepped it up. He's not, remotely on the level of Checchetto, but, I don't think I don't look at his work and say, oh, I can tell that that's traced from this movie anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I think on a technical level, Messina has improved, but I think like, and we'll talk about this in as we get further into the review, but like I think Messina still suffers from the fact that clearly he gets the less important stuff than Checchetto gets. You know what I mean? Like Checchetto gets like the 2 issues in the Savage Land with Kraven hunting Peter and Harry, and it's these like emotionally intense issues, and with these lush backgrounds and highly detailed, and it's just like like breathtaking stuff. Like I think those are the 2 like standout issues of this run so far, or at least what we're going to be talking about tonight. And then like Messina comes in to kind of do the Peter, MJ, and the kids are out in the desert, and nothing's really happening issue. You know what I mean? Like it's just and I
mean, he does get to draw Sandman, but
yeah, like I said, it's technically good, but I don't feel like those issues, they very clearly don't have the same weight as the ones that Checchetto gets to do. They just don't.
Oh no, I think that it's more the narrative than anything, that like you can immediately feel like the foot releasing off the gas.
Yeah,
because he's saving the good stuff for Checchetto.
Right, but that's the thing. If the narrative, if they're not going to treat Messina like an if they're putting him on I mean, is it Marvel's best-selling book or one of them, right? I mean, it's
Yeah, I mean, for a long time, for like at least the first 10 issues, I think it was outselling ASM.
yeah. But I was gonna say, like, if you're gonna put this guy on your best-selling book, then like he should get the A-list material, and he's not. Like, you know, if the issue is less enjoyable to read from a narrative standpoint, it makes me appreciate it's hard for me to sit there and be like, but yeah, and look at this line work from Messina, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's he's fine, but they're not. If they're gonna treat him like the backup, it's hard for me to you know, mentally associate him as being even remotely on par with Checchetto.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily blame Hickman. Like, if I know I've got this big story moment and I got to choose between
Sure.
Checchetto and Messina, I'm choosing Checchetto to deliver it. Like,
Right.
100%.
Right.
Yeah.
But then, you know, whatever. I know why.
Then get an artist that he doesn't feel that way about.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
I do think Wilson's colors do hold the thing together, like, you know, more than it might otherwise with that kind of disparity in art. Like, there is a sort of like cohesion between the colors that and his talented work in that regard that at least makes it feel like in the same universe as each other. And like, I do think that they are narratively less weighty. But I do think that that does help to sort of like color over the that discrepancy a little bit. What do you think continuing as we like go down this experiment where all of the Ultimate books are happening in real time, like month to month, so to speak? How do you feel like the timeline element of this title like has kind of played out? Because like Hickman does some interesting things here, like make the first two issues that we're going to talk about. Like one is January 31st,
Right.
and the technicality he gets away with is making the next one February 1st.
Right.
Right. So he's kind of tricked the system. But then you ask yourself, if he's got to trick the system, what's the point of doing this?
Well, right.
Do you have a feeling about the timeline stuff?
Well, that was just going to be my point, which was like, you know, I think initially when they were doing it this way, you know, month to month, it was like, oh, okay. I mean, like, it's a concept. You know, certainly, you know, that was how the 616 was at first. You know what I mean? Like, it felt like very spaced out. But like, yeah, if we're gonna start like kind of gaming the system a little bit, like you know, like here's a technicality, then it's like, just tell your story how you have to tell it. Like, I don't see why we need to keep doing this convention, and not to mention the fact that like we, you know, this is already going longer than they anticipated it would, and I know things are gonna. I don't know. I don't see the point in continuing this charade much longer, I guess, is my point.
I just like reflecting on it. Like, I think issues 13 and 14 are the best issues of this bunch because they don't have to adhere to that timeline thing, because he cheated it.
Yeah.
Right. Like, there's so many interesting ideas in the story that Hickman has created, but it feels like he doesn't have time to get into them because he's only got like, you know, a 1 day per month to play this thing out. And so like he feels like he can't really spend that much time on some things, although how he chooses to spend his time on Gwen and Harry is something we'll definitely talk about. But like, there are so many cool ideas I'd love to see him dive into that it feels like I can't shake it up too much, because how am I going to explain where we're at a month from now? I mean, not to mention the jump from issue 12 to 13, where we were left on a massive cliffhanger about the like symbiote suit being Peter, to suddenly, you know, Richard is Spider-Man, and the mechanics that made that happen, you know. So maybe he's willing to take some risks, but like, I don't know, just like reading 13 and 14 and just being like, oh, here's a normal narrative, made me go, yeah, this is like a real hindrance to this title having to jump like this. Anyway, anything else you want to say overall about the book? I know we've hinted at our discussion about Harry Osborn. Feelings about that character now?
Yeah, I would love to start getting into some more specifics here, if that's good.
Let's do it then.
Yeah. Where do you want to start?
Let's start with Harry Osborn. I've been jokingly calling this book in the Slack Ultimate Green Goblin. And I've been doing it, I think, since the first arc that we covered on this book, because I've long said I think that's the more interesting character.
Yes.
And I think that's still true here, while also being a flawed character.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, in revealing the notes here, I mean, you know, at one point you refer to Harry as being the better character, and I'm like, is better the word? I mean, it's clearly the character that Hickman wants to spend more time with, that Hickman is personally more interested in. But like, with all that being said, like, who is this Harry Osborn? I guess he's, you know, he's trying to live up to his father's. I mean, you know, here's something where we do have some parallels to the 616, and I guess I get it. I don't know, like it just seems so odd to me that we spend so much time with Harry Osborn, like
Yeah.
I you know, like, because like, you know. Yeah, you mentioned earlier it's an Iron Man suit. It's like, so it's like, is this an Iron Man book with Spider-Man as the sidekick? You know, like it's just like, yeah, I'm never gonna get over the fact that like we got an Ultimate Spider-Man and a revival of this, and like it feels like so much of the conflict of this book revolves around what is happening with Harry.
And the whole backstory with his wife.
And his
but we'll
wife.
get to that in
Yeah,
a second.
yeah.
Yeah. Like, look, I'm still invested in this character, and I think there's some interesting things going on with him. I think the whole idea of having an AI version of his father in his helmet that is constantly demeaning him is really interesting. I mean, again, like I can say for a lot of this book, all of this is very interesting. Like Richard Parker being Spider-Man with his dad as the suit is really interesting,
Right.
you know? But the moment where this character kind of stopped working for me is in this arc of stories. You know, there's an interesting like moment where Peter and Harry are cornered by Kraven the Hunter, and you know, Harry is like telling Peter like the only way out of this situation, because they know about the existence of our families, is we have to kill him.
Yeah.
And it's a legit point.
Yeah.
Like, what other option do they have? This guy who's on a team of villains that's backed by this global power, you know, yes, he may be on his own side quest with them in the Savage Land, which is very exciting and visually dazzling. But the only way out of it really is that this guy has to not exist anymore.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's a level of knowledge you can't come back from. And the book has been leaning into this for such a long time with like Peter and Harry, and Peter, for whatever reason, like, you know, people don't, I guess, need a reason to not want to kill people, but
Sure.
For the amount of like thematic heft that they put on this, it'd be nice to get a little more information about Peter's rationale.
Well, right.
But
I mean, so much of, you know, we'll talk about this vis-a-vis Richard being a Spider-Man, but I was gonna say, like, so much of the drama around and the conflict around Peter is, you know, his family. I must protect my family. I can't let anything happen to my family. And yet, like you said, like, this is, you know, he's being set up with a situation where, like, this is it, man. It's like, this is the Omega level risk to your family. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
And he's just like, yeah, but I can't do that. And you're just like, but why? You know, no, in normal circumstances, you don't necessarily, like, in 616, we understand with Peter, because it's with great power there must also come great responsibility. But like, there still has not been that moment for Peter. It's been like, oh, I guess I was always supposed to be this guy. Okay, I'm gonna do it now. And now what? You know what I mean? Like,
and in the 616, death means something to Peter.
yeah,
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he believes in like reform, even for his worst enemy. The Green Goblin is shown as Norman, that he can be a normal person, but he's suffering through the follies of his choices, right?
Right.
And Peter has to believe in redemption for anyone, because he is on his own redemptive arc for the death of Uncle Ben, right? but that doesn't exist here.
No.
So you need to rationalize it in another way, right? And so then the book doubles down on it by, having, like Mysterio kill Craven, which like we'll get to the Mysterio of it all in a moment. But like it comes back later, like where Harry and Gwen are on this like side quest to attack Mr. Negative and save these hostages, and his wife triggers a bomb that blows up the building that could have killed the hostages if they weren't successful. And now nobody dies, but Harry realizes that his wife was willing to let people die, if they messed up. And, she's, and he kind of pushes back and she says, you were saying the same thing just a couple like months ago. Like, what's different about this? And he's like, yeah, I guess you're right. But you can sense some hesitancy from him. And I think we're meant to believe that because he saw Peter hesitate killing Craven, that he's now having a question of confidence and morality. But like, based on what? Like he was right. And like they do none of the work to establish why this character might be having a change of heart in some way. And it's like there's a whole issue about like that culminates with this is the climax, that he and his wife have this rift about whether or not it's okay to kill people. And I can't even identify the moment for why that change might be occurring.
Yeah, I don't know what to add to that. But it's just kind of mind bending in terms of what we are being asked to do as the reader here, to kind of like follow the logic jumps and chains and whatnot. Like it's very all over the place, and I don't know what the through line is for these characters.
I want to touch on two other smaller aspects to this book, and it's weird for me to say two smaller aspects of this book because I thought that these were kind of the main aspects of this book, which is to say the paper and like MJ and MJ Watson and I guess the whole like Parker family. So let's talk about the paper first, because like we spent a lot of time setting up the paper and Ben and Jonah's quest, and then you and I ridiculed this book endlessly over the Ben Reilly thing.
Right.
And this book has largely forgotten that the paper exists as a main plot point, and then it doubles down on some other things. What do you think about the paper going into this particular arc?
I mean, yeah, I mean, we talked about in the last grouping of issues how, it was like, oh, we're gonna expose the Kingpin, but we're gonna put a fake name on it, even though we're like this 2-man operation that everyone knows it's us. I mean, like it was just dumb on its face, and like, the whole Ben Reilly thing, which was, Kingpin, basically says, well, I had to wipe out every single Ben Reilly, and, like, oh, you killed every Ben Reilly in the area? He's like, I killed every Ben Reilly on the planet. And it's like, okay, we get it. Kingpin's a really bad person who's connected, but like I mean, like you said, first of all, we didn't even get much with the paper in this arc period. So like this one little like bit of lip service we got to it was just unfulfilling on its face. But then like to kind of have that be the payoff for the big expose that Ben and Jonah did here, I'm just kind of like, all right, so where are we now? It's like they're like, well, you can't scare us, and it's like, all right, then what was the point of this whole experiment then? You know what I mean? Like I don't know, like maybe, I'm not I don't know. Do you get what I'm saying? Like I just like what?
Yeah,
what is the
I
payoff
get what
here?
you're saying. Like first of all, Kingpin says like, I want you guys to keep doing what you're doing because it's benefiting me, and now I'm killing people because you're playing games with me, and they're both unmoved by it. Like these are our protagonists,
right?
Like we're supposed to like them as heroic characters. Like they're like unfazed by a bunch of people being killed because of their dumb choice. Like, and which Kingpin acknowledges was a dumb choice. And then there's like a throwaway line in the books where like Gwen is talking, I think, to the other Mysterios, where she says, we've been feeding all of this information about the Kingpin through Wesley, who's another Mysterio, to Ben and Jonah, but they're only interested in the superhero stuff rather than any of the like backroom dealings, of this big global empire. It's been really frustrating for us. So not only do we find out that they're letting people get killed and that they're now a tool of the Kingpin who is asking them to continue, they're also not covering the interesting stuff. They're just doing tabloid superhero stuff. And it's like, okay, what was the point of all this? Right, like you said, and it's like just turning us against them, but not really like acknowledging that it's doing so. Like it's still holding them up, I think, as heroes.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know if I don't even know if I'm turning against them. It just seems utterly rudderless to me. You know what I mean? It's like, and yeah, I mean, it is. Sure, it certainly is a character flaw that they're like not showing remorse, but like I also think there's a narrative flaw in that, like, there is no development beyond just this gimmick that they did here. Like, oh, we're gonna have Ben and Jonah, and they're gonna have a paper too, and they're gonna be like kind of like these muckraking journalists. But it's like, okay, like this is clearly not being thought through. Like this is the 616 karaoke that this book falls prey to every once in a while, and yet, like, in terms of the really big thematic stuff that we know about Spider-Man, it tries to stay untethered from that, but then like, but we have to tell the story. What's a Spider-Man story without Jonah? And Uncle Ben's gonna live in this unit. I mean, I still go back to, why is Uncle Ben even alive in this universe? Because like I feel like this character has been completely wasted. You know what I mean? Like I guess he has these occasional, we have to have fatherly, moments with Uncle Ben, with Peter, but like, you could accomplish that with him being dead as well. I mean, like what is the conflict here? I guess that's it. It's like they did this whole thing. Kingpin calls their bluff, and they're just like, all right, well, stalemate. And it's just like I would have infinitely more interest in this story if like, maybe Ben is like, I'm out, I can't do this. I can't risk this. Or like we need drama. There's no drama here. Like Kingpin being like, I killed every Ben Reilly because you're an idiot. And they're being like, okay, well, you called us out. Goodbye. Like that's not enough. Like that's not good enough. We have to do something with this, or just write this part out of the book, in my opinion.
Yeah. Or if I had confidence that they were doing something smart, like, the Ultimates, I love the Ultimates issue 6 that came out like the day after the election. It was like, it just captured my spirit, like for how I felt that day so well. And the Ultimates fail hard in that issue, but it's a learned lesson of, like, about hubris and like, and all of that. And like, I don't know what this story is about, in a way that I do in a comic like that, and the same is true. Let's move on to MJ, because I don't think that their daughter gets any appearance in these 6 issues, or she's just in the background. I know Richard we'll talk about in a moment, but like, and actually we could talk about Richard in conjunction with MJ, because like, to me, this MJ is not dodging the label of being like a pure fantasy character that's like waifu, endlessly supportive, no spine or interests of her own. She's just there to be Peter's wife because that will sell this book. And I don't mean to like label the book in that way, but that's how the character is written. Like, she is completely spineless in the book, even after it's revealed that Harry has died, and that Peter put his family in harm's way that could have killed them all. And that Richard is now going out as Spider-Man in an AI costume to fight crime. MJ's like, okay, that's all fine with me. Like, there's a line where like, Peter's like, oh, we're on the run in Nevada or whatever. And she's like, don't think of it that way. We're on vacation. And it's like, are you out of your mind? Like, this isn't vacation.
Yeah.
Everybody's life is in danger.
Yeah, I mean, again, it just underplays the stakes so much, and I don't understand what the point of that is. Like then why have these stakes in the first place if you're not going to play with them and
Yeah.
create conflict amongst the cast of characters here? I mean, it's we saw it with Ben and Jonah. We're seeing it with MJ and Peter here. I mean, like, we don't have to have MJ like threaten to divorce Peter. Like, that's not a logical solution either. But like, I feel like even like, a story as vapid as Maximum Carnage at least gave MJ like a real like journey in terms of like, I don't know if I can keep doing this any longer kind of a thing. You know what I mean? I got like, Eddie Brock showing up half dead on my doorstep, and like I'm smoking a pack a day now because I'm stressed out by everything that's going on. You know what I mean? Like, this is just like you said, like it's pure fantasy, and like, I don't know. I don't know who it's playing to, because like, I don't know. Like, I maybe this is it doesn't make sense to me. Like, give me some conflict, please. Like, like have MJ furrow an eyebrow. You know what I mean? Like, can we get something? Like, can she?
But she might look ugly then, Mark. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, right.
But,
Yeah.
like, I think there's like, if you wanted to do this version of the character and write her this way, like there's a way to do it. Like, and I mentioned the sort of like Antifa, like fervor, right? There are people that like go out and put their family at risk and all of these things to fight for a greater cause, right? But that's every part of their life, right? Like it's greatly articulated in the way that they live their life, right? First of all, I don't know anything about this MJ other than that she's a mom and I guess she owns her own fashion company, right? But like, I don't get the sense that this person is like, I'm willing to put it all on the line in order to stick it to the man, right? In the Sandman issue, after Peter has been gone for months, presumed dead, they find out Harry is dead, even though we know he's not,
Right.
Or maybe we don't at that point.
Not at that point, no.
Right?
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, hey, people are saying that something is going on the other side of that mountain. This sounds like a job for Spider-Man. And, and I guess maybe she doesn't know about Richard at that point, although she does issues later.
Right.
And so she's like, go get him, Peter. And it's like, wait, didn't you just get this guy back, like, from the dead? Like, is there no room for introspection? But again, if you're going to do that, then do the character work that tells us why MJ values Peter's role as Spider-Man so heavily enough to put her family at risk. You got to tell us.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Richard, the one at risk, I guess. What do you think about Richard as Venom Black Suit Spider-Man?
I mean, I think on paper it's interesting, but again, with like the circumstances and the stakes that have been set up in this comic, this twist makes no sense to me. Like, why is MJ okay with it? Why is Peter okay with it? I mean, I guess I understand why Richard would want to explore this, but like, even in terms like, we got some like funny banter between Richard and the suit, don't touch the wife and all that kind of, but like I
on its own, that stuff is very fun.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And I think that's true of a lot of the issues of this comic is like individual scenes in complete isolation are a lot of fun.
Yes, for sure. But it just makes me very uncomfortable that, on one breath, like Peter returns and it's like, like I just went through this near death of experience and things are so bad that I have to like up and move everyone out into the middle of nowhere. But then in the next breath, it's like, hey, let's, oh, so you're using,
let's go fight a mutated sand monster together.
Yeah. I can't quite wrap my head around that either. You know what I mean? Like it's a fun concept. And it's different. And it's Peter and children, and he's got a good dynamic with Richard. You know what I mean? Like it is a fun father son dynamic, but I, you know. Once again, the stakes don't mean anything in this comic, and and I'm like, so why are we like why are we avoiding conflict where there's such obvious places for it?
Yeah, I mean, like, look, I'm not gonna go over the moon here to praise Finding Nemo, which I think is a very like by the numbers plotted movie, but like. Peter just went through this whole harrowing endeavor where he thought he was going to lose his family, right? What if he comes back and he's overprotective of them? So when Richard shows up on this hunt for Sandman, he tries to get him out of there, at all costs, or keep him safe at all costs, to the point that it injures him, right? In a sort of Marlin Nemo style where he has to learn to trust his son,
right.
Or something like that, right? Like there's so many avenues you could go with this. And like for direct comparison, like I think Renew Your Vows that Jerry Conway was writing did a lot more with the sort of family superhero dynamic than this book does. Like, the same way that I was disappointed in Spectacular Spider-Man for not really leaning into anything about what made Miles and Peter's team ups anything special other than it being two Spider-Men.
Right.
There's some banter here, but like not as much as I would want out of two characters that have ostensibly gone through what they've gone through. Right. And then the same thing, like, again, these sort of isolated scenes that don't really put any weight on the narrative drama is like Black Cat. You get this character that shows up and like, I get it, like hot teenage girl in a black skimpy costume. But like Richard's just gone through losing his dad because of Spider-Man stuff, and he immediately pulls his mask off and reveals his identity to this person, which of course goes on to like stab him in the back because he's like in love with her or trusting her or whatever. But the book one does no work to really invest us in whatever their relationship is because it doesn't have time to.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really tell us what's special about Black Cat that Richard feels this level of safety with her, whether it be in the wake of the death of his father or whatever. We just have to kind of copy paste what we know about characters from the other universes to say, I guess Black Cat's like this, and the character, even when she backstabs him, says like, well, it's in my nature.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, we don't know anything about you.
Yeah. We know your nature from another series, but not from this one, like.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Kingdom of the Mole Man. We've talked a little bit about this, but to me, like these two issues in isolation, I was like, oh man, maybe this book is finally finding its like place, right? Like something's happening. The stakes are elevating, and it's visually incredible. And I think you largely agree with that too. Yeah, issues 13 and 14 are like
these are the
cool stuff.
These are the highlights of. I mean this. I mean, I might just go as far as to say like this might have been my favorite. Two issues since the initial 6 that we got, way back when the series started. Like this was great storytelling. This was high stakes. It was high drama. I mean, there is some Hickmanisms going on for sure in terms of convoluted storytelling involving like why are Craven and Mole Man kind of betraying the Kingpin and doing their own thing here. You know what I mean? But like, if you kind of push that aside and just focus on the central drama at hand here, it's like, Harry, Peter, you get a running start against this like killer who's coming for you, and you got to figure this out. And like, it's a simple premise. I mean, it's like, I could probably think about 2080s action movies that do something like this, but it works. It's entertaining, it's dramatic, it's tense, it's intense. I thought these were very well done issues.
And for once I felt like the momentum of the action and the choices was on Peter, because Harry gets injured, and so Peter is the only, like, first of all, Harry doesn't have his suit, so Peter is the powerhouse, and Harry gets injured, so Peter has to care for him. And so his choices get elevated, and then there's the stakes of both their families being in danger, and that exists until a certain point, and that's the point where the comic fell apart for me in issue 14. But like up until then, like you've got a really interesting situation that is actually allowing Peter to like tell us something about his character and what he values and what he's willing to do to get out of the situation, until the book lets the gas out of the balloon or whatever, the air out of the balloon, by having Harry be like, oh, actually, you know what? My family's going to be fine because I've got a backup system that I've implemented that I've never told you about that's going to make sure that everybody's safe in my absence. Right. And then Harry is promptly killed. And I don't know about you, Mark, but the way that that was staged and like that his death happened off panel and then is revealed,
Right.
like it felt like to me, like, oh, by the way, we've got this magical machine that can bring someone back from the dead, but now get invested in me dying, you know? Like the minute Mysterio showed up and then Harry's like, I've got a magical like backup safety device. I'm like, oh, it's Mysterio. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. Is it meant to be that obvious? I don't know if you had that same read the first time you read this through.
I don't know if I quite figured out what the mechanics of it were going to be.
Not quite as cynical as me.
I don't get me wrong. I was like, this isn't real. You know what I mean? Like, this is, we're definitely setting up a loophole before we even before the body's even cold. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it just, it was, it felt like we really could have done something dramatic here. I keep coming back to drama and tension. And I feel like, we this book could have made a move, and maybe it still will at some point, but it's not, it kind of head faked here and didn't do it. And like you said, it takes the air out of the balloon. Do you want to?
It had me on a knife's edge. Like I was really tense during that sequence.
Yeah.
But just like the way that it was executed made me go, I know this isn't real. And I don't know, man. Like if you're gonna kill Harry off, you better make it feel real.
Yeah. Yeah, but and even like, Craven, like, oh, he shoots Peter, but I wasn't aiming for you. Like it was also just a weird, like it was going out of its way to set it up to not follow through. You know what I mean? Like there was too many, like, it wasn't like Craven is like standing, holding Harry and slits his throat or something. You know what I mean? Like not saying that, it needed to be that graphic, but you know what I mean? Like it was, very clearly being set up to be a reverse fake, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Like they mechanically set it up in a way where it was like, yeah, there's no way this is actually going to be real.
And look, reverse fakes are not anything new for comics, but like in a book so desperate for drama that has been like leaning into the only dramatic tension in the book being between Harry and Peter about their methods of acting as so-called heroes, to like bring that to a climactic point and then cheat it. I really felt like a cheat to me as a reader.
Yeah.
And then this transitions into the Mysterios, which to me is where this book really like truly, I'm not going to say it's all like, dead and buried and stick a fork in it, but like, it's the point where I like really began to roll my eyes and like just fall completely out of sync with whatever this book is interested in doing. And I have a number of reasons why, but Mark, your thoughts on the Mysterios?
I don't have a ton. I know you're going to get specifically into some of the mechanics here, and I applaud you for that. I mean, like, for me, just going beyond like the lack of sense that this whole Mysterio subplot had, like, for me, my biggest concern with this, and this was even like my concern when this book was and this creative team was first announced was like, how is Hickman going to like Hickman on this? You know what I mean? And this is Hickmaning up to 11.
This is like the Council of Reeds level.
Yeah, 100.
Hickman,
Well,
yeah.
that was exactly what I got brought down to, the Council of Reeds, and yet, in the context of Fantastic Four and Reed Richards, Councils of Reeds actually makes a lot of sense and like was kind of cool. You know what I mean? This is like,
It's super cool, and it's rooted in a moral question of like all these other Reeds are willing to use science without consideration for morality,
Yeah.
but our Reed is, and that's interesting.
yes. But like, having this like council of Mysterios and in this world where there are no heroes, and then it's like, and Gwen is taking over for her father, and and I was just like, oh, Hickman is like really getting into his mythology here, and like how can I weird this up and really like lean into this, and like on one breath I think like Hickman had a ball doing this. Like I think like this feels very true to Hickman. You know what I mean? Like this was probably
Yes.
like this was the most like Avengers Infinity, Fantastic Four, Secret Wars Hickman that I've read in this book. But in the context of, again, Ultimate Spider-Man and this very real world, like fascist, anti-fascist world that's been established here, this just didn't make any sense, and like I really didn't enjoy it.
Yeah. Look, I'm going to echo a lot of the things that you said, and maybe dig in a little bit. But like you mentioned it, like, and I mentioned it earlier, is like there is no diverging point in the 616 that makes sense with this version of Mysterio finding its way to light. So like completely bury the idea that this is meant to be comparable to the 616.
Sure.
And maybe we're putting too much weight on that, but I think the book is putting too much weight on that, at least for character work,
Right.
not for world building. But then secondly, like the whole point of this Ultimate Universe, the whole like narrative thrust is that like there are no heroes. Like the maker went through all of time, removed all the heroes so that he can have control over the universe. Now, did that mean that in the time since, like other developments couldn't happen? I guess not. I mean, in the Ultimates, there's like a whole island of Hulks that have developed and things like that. So maybe it doesn't break it. But to me, it feels deeply antithetical to the like core concept of this book that like, if Peter can't be Spider-Man, then every other supporting cast character is going to be secretly a part of some powerful cabal of Mysterios.
Yeah.
And that like, and I'm not exaggerating that like everyone, because it's like every sub-supporting cast character in this title is a Mysterio, and not in a way that feels like that was originally planned, right? Like you've got like, Robbie Robertson and Wesley and Vanessa Fisk that are all Mysterios, and it's like, so why didn't you guys like bury Kingpin a lot earlier?
Right.
Like if you're all been a part of this generations long Mysterio thing, they're biding their time or whatever. Look, I'm not going to say it was invented whole cloth, but it feels that way.
Yeah.
And if it feels that way, then it might as well be. And it's just such a pivot from. It's been like 2 whole issues on this, like and going back through previous issues, explaining what the alternate point of view showed us. I don't care. Tell me a Spider-Man story.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I mean, we had an entire issue and change dedicated to explaining the mechanics of this, and it's like, we have limited bandwidth for this story, and we just had Peter had to relocate everybody, and Harry's dead, and like what are we doing? Like why are we spending an entire comic to explain about the Council of Mysterios or the Cabal of Mysterios or whatever you want to call it? I mean, like, and like you said, like let's just work in every single supporting character that we can as a Mysterio. It's just so. out of nowhere and needlessly untethered to anything. I'm running out of things to say. I'm just echoing what you're saying here. I apologize.
Well, issue 18 has this interesting moment where Harry like reveals himself to Peter, like as having been like gone and he's still alive.
Right.
Right. And Peter doesn't really react very strongly. And Harry says, oh, wow, I would have expected like a bigger reaction. Like maybe I should like go die again or whatever. And MJ says like, oh, like he didn't eat for weeks. He was so broken up. And it's like, okay, so then show us that.
Yeah.
Like show us how this impacted Peter and what this friendship means to him instead of like making a joke out of it, because that would have meant more to me as the reader than all of this, stuff. And whatever, you could say it all comes back to play in the end and there will be some big role for the Mysterios to play. But like, this is ultimate Spider-Man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell me what's up with Peter.
Yeah. I mean, we're just not interested in that character. Anything else on Mysterio?
Well, now that we've like fully alienated most of our audience, do we want to wrap this up and we get some final statements in here, like moving into what we've now learned is the final arc, right? 19 to 24, and then
Right, or at least the final Hickman arc. I mean, right? I mean,
right?
Yeah.
The implication I picked up was Hickman built some big story with Dennis Camp, and they're going to pull it all off by the end of the 24 issues and ultimate end. And then some reset will happen that will allow this series, which I think is sold more than they ever thought it would, to continue probably with, I would say more than probably, definitely with a new creative team. At which point we'll assess whether or not that still holds interest for us. I'm willing to see this through to 24 just to see like, okay, like Hickman.
Well, right. Yeah.
I got bored of your FF and Avengers runs about this point, but then you wowed me in the end with Secret Wars and that end of the Fantastic Four run. Maybe you've got something special here. I'm dubious, but let's see. Maybe there's some killer third act that's going to shock us all.
Yeah. I mean, look, like I said at the very beginning, like this is not a bad comic. And I do enjoy reading it, but like I don't enjoy reading it as a Spider-Man story. It's just kind of
right.
And to your earlier point, I think Ultimates is a better comic than this one is. You know what I mean? Like I probably read through these more immediately because I know, between the Slack and elsewhere that it's going to be part of the conversation, and I don't necessarily want to be getting things spoiled for me if I'm on social media or whatever. So like, I read these books as quickly as I do like ASM, you know what I mean, to stay on top of that. But I don't even want to say I enjoy it more or less than ASM. It's like I said, it's a completely different flavor for me. This is like reading a really decent Marvel book that occasionally has Spider-Man in it. That's kind of how I view this book. That's fine, but I don't think it's the best thing ever, and I don't know if anything will happen at the end of 24 issues that could move me from that. Hickman has done some pretty spectacular stuff to end his creative runs, so maybe I'll eat those words. Obviously, I'm seeing it through, but like as of right now, I still do not think there is anything special about this comic as a Spider-Man story. I think that the things that people think make it special and different than ASM are just different for the sake of being different in my mind. So yeah. We'll see what happens.
I can't argue with any of that. I will add my final thought is this comic reads and feels like a book manned by A-list talent, but writing a unfocused, overstuffed comic that was either padded to be longer than originally planned or just is so stuffed with ideas and a weird publishing timeline schedule that has made it very hard to like latch onto any real there. If it is the Antifa Us Against the Establishment comic, go read the Ultimates. If you want a really great Spider-Man comic, I'd actually say go read Joe Kelly's, #1 issue onward. We're still seeing how the Hellgate thing plays out, but that to me is the definitive Spider-Man comic that's happening at the moment. Shockingly, a year ago, if you had asked me if I would be more interested in a Hickman or Joe Kelly Spider-Man comic, I would have told you the exact opposite.
Right.
Right. And yet ASM feels so much more like a Spider-Man comic than this one does.
Yeah.
Which I don't really quite know where its soul is, which is, continue calling it Ultimate Green Goblin.
There you go.
But there you go. So Mark, I'm going to make you do the ugly duty of giving this thing a grade first.
I'm not even giving it a bad grade, Dan. It's very conflicting because, like I said, I don't dislike this comic. I just don't think it's a Spider-Man comic. But overall, it's probably like a B- for me. You know what I mean? Like it's a tick above average. It's nothing wrong with it, but like it's fine. B- is it's an 80, 79, 80.
Yeah, no, I was going C plus B-. So I'll land right there with you, B-. So a tick above average. I don't see what's special about it, but feel free to write to us or tag us or whatever. Like, I want to be convinced. What am I missing? That is not something that I've hinted at already on the show and find not fulfilling, because I hate getting skeets on Blue Sky about like how I'm missing the themes about anti-fascism, because I see them. I just don't think they're well handled.
Right.
Tell me why it's good. That's what I want to know. But anyway, Mark, why don't you bring us home?
Yes, Dan. Well, it's that time for all good things to come to an end. So we want to say thank you to you, the listeners and viewers, for tuning in to this episode of The Amazing Spider Talk.
Yeah, this podcast exists because of listener support on Patreon. For only $4.99 a month, you can help support our show's existence while getting early episodes, including Amazing Spider-Man reviews, the same weeks the comics release, and early access to these Ultimate Spider-Man reviews, at least the next one that we're going to be doing to wrap up the whole series, exclusive artwork, and a ton of other bonuses. So thank you to everybody who already supports us in the work that we do. Plus, we wanted to extend a special thanks to our newest contributors, Joshua Smith and Toripu. I'm sorry, Toripu. I probably torpedoed your name. But I also wanted to shout out the following supporters on Patreon. Dan Guidis, I probably messed that up. John Casillo, Andy Thibault. See, now I'm Mark.
Don't ask me.
Goodwin Forrester, Jonathan Bentley Smith, and Taylor Murphy, all people who I actively engage with on the Slack. Maybe I should have people sending voice messages about their names so that I'm not murdering them. I put a call out on the Slack this past week that our show had gone a little bit into debt with the cost of everything going up and our Patreon and listener numbers dipping, admittedly. And these fellow people rose to the occasion to increase their donations to help us out. Mark and I are going to be fine. Don't worry about it. But, some of the bills kind of added up. And so people really stepped up to make this happen. And it really moved me. And I'm going to shake up kind of how we do things to allow us to not find ourselves in these situations again as everything goes up in price. But I wanted to give a special shout out to all of those wonderful people. Mark and I act like the show is some major monolith in comics culture, at least maybe in terms of our bravado. But we do have a small, dedicated and passionate audience who really do help us keep what we're doing or keep doing what we're doing. So, look, Mark's about to read our Patreon ad read, which we say every show. But we include that in the show for a reason, and we mean every part of it, about how niche our topic is and onward. And so we really do appreciate your support. So take it away, Mark.
Well said, Dan. So if you value smart comics criticism and historical analysis, We hope you'll consider supporting us on Patreon. What we do on this show is admittedly niche. Still, we feel that we offer valuable commentary and model fair methods of criticism for a character and medium that rarely receives the kind of consideration we believe it deserves. So if that is valuable to you, we can only continue doing what we do with your support on Patreon.
So, Mark, until our podcast takes a hard turn and becomes exclusively about our friend Alan Scherstle's adventures in being available, what's our motto?
With great podcasts, there must also come the amazing spider talk.